everyone. Thanks for joining me for this extra special edition podcast in conjunction with NAVC's advocacy platform, Embrace. In this episode, I had the privilege of sitting down with Congressman Dr. Kurt Schrader of Oregon. Some of you may remember Dr. Schrader and I speaking a couple of years ago on the topic of One Health. He is always wonderful to speak with, and in this talk, we covered another important topic. At the end of this congressional term, there will no longer be representation in Congress from the veterinary industry. Dr. Schrader and I discussed why it's so important to have representation from the animal health industry and the unique perspective that animal health professionals can bring to this role. If this episode speaks to you and you feel you might be the right person to continue to represent the veterinary industry in Congress, be sure to check out my interview with Mike Bober to learn more about what it's like inside a political campaign and the challenges and excitement that it can bring. Congressman Kurt Schrader represents Oregon's 5th congressional district. Before being elected to Congress, Dr. Schrader, a farmer and veterinarian for more than 30 years, established and managed Clackamas County Veterinary Clinic in Oregon City and operated his farm where he sold organic fruits and vegetables. In 1996, he was elected to the Oregon State House of Representatives, followed by the Oregon State Senate in 2003 and the U.S. Congress in 2008. Congressman Schrader attended Cornell University, where he received his bachelor's in government in 1973. He received his veterinary degree from the University of Illinois in 1977. He currently serves as a member of the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, which oversees a wide portfolio of issues ranging from healthcare to the environment. Dr. Schrader is also a member of the Blue Dog Coalition, New Democrat Coalition, for which he serves as co-chair of the Affordable and Accessible Healthcare Task Force, and the only bipartisan working group in the House, the Problem Solvers Caucus. All right, let's go ahead and get into our talk. Well, Dr. Schrader, thank you so much for coming on the podcast with me today. It's such an honor to have you on.
Oh, thanks, Cassi. Good to be back. Enjoy talking to my friends, colleagues, and allies here in the animal health industry space. It's always good to be back home.
Absolutely. And we're happy to have you. And I guess this is of extra importance because coming up into this next term, we are going to be without an animal health representative in Congress. I guess kind of what kind of implications do you see for, why is it so important that we keep animal health representation in Congress?
I found that a lot of my colleagues, while they love their animals or do a great job on the farm or ranch, they are unaware, for the most part, of what it takes to make sure that we have all the opportunities and all the products that we need out here to take care of our fur-footed friends. And there's a fair amount of misconception about, how veterinarians and the animal health industry plays in the pharmaceutical space, in the public health space. I mean, in public health, in my opinion, veterinarians are much better trained in zoonotic diseases than our medical colleagues. And as we saw with the COVID pandemic, critical to have a united response. I've introduced, and we've got elements of it passed into legislation and law for a One Health approach to pandemics, where, believe it or not, the agencies who are all well-intended have not been working well together. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic where USDA, the Department of Agriculture, and the Department of Health came in with two different approaches as folks were coming off those boats with COVID. Remember the early cruise line problems? So it's important to have veterinarians that understand the totality of public health, the implications to be involved. And frankly, sometimes just to negotiate good deals between our livestock friends and our pet friends. That can sometimes get to be a little controversial out there.
Sure. I think that makes a lot of sense. My sister is actually a physician, and her and I kind of compare and contrast sometimes. And it is really interesting, like the different approaches, the different trainings, and our different strengths about things that we know about, like you said, zoonotic diseases and some of these other things. So, even just in our little micro environment there, the importance of a One Health approach and us learning from each other, I can see the benefits of that just being hugely amplified as all these different agencies work together with all of our different knowledge and training.
Yep. No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I think, one of the burning questions that many of us have is what is it like to be a US congressperson? Can you give us some insight into what the experience has been like for you and who you think would be a good fit for a position like this?
Well, another veterinarian, veterinary technician, pick your animal health field, and I think you'd be great here. It is, as I was alluding to before, it's really important. People are well intended. Animals have a lot of cachet on the Hill. Pet night in Washington, D.C. is a big, big deal, brings everyone together, Democrat, Republican, staff, member, you name it. Great night. But again, the experience in what it takes to deliver good public health care as well as good veterinary care is lacking unless you've got an animal health professional serving the United States Congress. It's been fun, sort of, big quotes on fun. It's been very meaningful for sure. It can get a little frustrating. But I'll say this, that when you're in the animal healthcare space as a veterinarian, it doesn't matter what your party label is, people turn to you, give you a little credibility. We were dealing with an issue in the last couple of Congresses regarding conditional use permits for different types of medications. As you all know, that in the veterinary field, it's sometimes tough to get these drug companies through all these clinical trials, run through all these tests for a limited population in the veterinary space compared to the human space. So we oftentimes get conditional approval for use of these drugs. And there was a lot of controversy about that. Some people were worried, though, the drug companies are trying to skirt their responsibility by doing the full clinical trial, full meal deal. And that was not the case. We know that's not the case. It's a question of economics. And we want to make sure that we have the same access that our human friends do to a lot of these life-saving drugs. I mean, whether it's in the cardiovascular space, the respiratory space, some of the orthopedic stuff that's going on now. I mean, it's pretty exciting. So we want to have that opportunity. So if I had not been there, I think some of my colleagues, particularly on the Democratic side, would have not allowed some of the conditional use permits that we currently have today for major and minor species. So that's just one example of how a veterinarian or a health professional, animal health professional, can really make a difference. Again, the credibility is huge. We had another issue that I think was absolutely critical to veterinarians. I alluded to it in another podcast that for a while there, the Drug Enforcement Agency was going to take away veterinarians' ability to carry narcotics in their ambulatory vehicles, whether it was a house call service in the city or a farm call service in rural America. And they were worried about, frankly, narcotics getting into bad hands, illicit purposes, whatever. So you're only allowed to have it at your office. Well, that doesn't work. And I remember a good friend of mine, veterinarian from Florida, Ted Yoho, and he was serving at the time too, said, well, you don't really mean veterinarians. You're talking about other people. And they said, no, we mean you too. He said, well, that's not right. We can't do our job. We can't provide humane euthanasia. We can't provide good analgesia in the farm or at the house. We can't do our job. And they were adamant. So we actually had to pass a bill. We had to pass a law to enable veterinarians to be able to carry these products in their trucks or the cars as they practice around the country. So it's a very, very clear example of where you have to have veterinarians, have to have health professionals, animal health professionals involved, or bad things could happen to our four-footed friends and our ability to practice medicine.
Goodness. And, as a mobile practitioner myself who directly benefits from the Veterinary Mobility Act, I can't thank you enough for being there to advocate for that and put it into effect.
Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing what people don't know. They're trying to do, this is often the case. I mean, in politics, everyone assumes the other person has some nefarious purpose and they're after you. And that's not actually often the case. A lot of it is well-intentioned type of work that has unintended consequences that can be quite harmful. And that's a really good example.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that speaks to the importance of that One Health approach of, we're talking about different health agencies working together, but really a lot of different industries maybe not having a full understanding of the way each other works and, the different implications that passing different laws and rules can have on individual industries. So having good representation across the board is so important.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, the skills you gain as a veterinarian or a veterinary technician, frankly, as you go through the curriculum and learning how to analyze problems, look at them at least slightly objectively, come up with a plan of action, and realize you got to get something done. Unfortunately, some of my colleagues in Congress and even in the state legislature, they're there to proselytize and not actually get stuff done. And that's not helpful. That does not move our country forward, doesn't move the animal health industry forward. It's not safe for our pets or our livestock. So I think it's really important, the background we have, to lend a little rationality to sometimes excited discussion here in Washington, D.C.
Sure, absolutely. Gosh, that's a whole nother discussion right there. Uh, well, I don't think, we can overstate the importance. And I think you've done an amazing job of illustrating the importance of having an animal health professional on the Hill. But when I think about it from a personal perspective, I mean, I'll be honest, it seems really overwhelming. It's a huge responsibility. You're in the public eye. Can you talk about, what kind of encouragement you would offer to people who think maybe I am the right person for this, and how to handle that responsibility and handle being in the public eye?
Well, if you've been a veterinarian or veterinary technician and had to make, frankly, life and death decisions for your patients out there, you can handle this job. You can handle this job. It's not as easy as I thought, sitting at my desk or behind the exam table or at the surgery suite, because you're also making some very serious decisions, as you alluded to, Cassie, for the people in your community, your state, and your country. But if you've made those tough life and death decisions back home, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay here. You'll have the ability to make those decisions. There are a number of my colleagues, again, both in the state legislature and here in Congress, that are not used to making decisions. And so they kind of go along with whatever or defer to others. And certainly, if you've got expertise in an area, yes, you should defer to these people to a degree. But oftentimes, you just want to be part of the herd. You want to be one of the folks that help set the course to make sure that everyone benefits at the end of the day. That is our job. And I think you have that job in your practice. You have to make sure that you take everyone's point of view into account, whether you agree with it initially or not, because it's valid. It is their point of view. If you want your client to give their cat pill for whatever problem 3-4 times a day, man, you better make sure you can explain that pretty well. That's a tough deal. And I think that enables veterinarians to have a unique voice, because we're used to explaining sometimes very difficult problems, whether it's in the health space or, frankly, in the public policy space, to our constituents or our clients. So they don't feel you're talked down to. They feel like they understand and they respect the fact that you're bringing them along as part of the team to solve that problem. And so all that stuff, I think, plays very well into the public service space. You have to have a bit of a thick skin. And frankly, usually your family has to have a thicker skin. A lot of that stuff, we're used to having people sometimes misstate what we're talking about or challenge us. But your family takes it, I think, sometimes a little more to heart than you do. So you got to make sure your whole family's on board when you step into the public service realm. But it is so important, and I remember very, very much, very vividly, my first State of the Union. I'm sitting in the United States House of Representatives. I remember watching it on TV many times, and the different senators walk into the House chamber, the Supreme Court members, the President of the United States, and I'm sitting there in real time, and as these people walk by, I'm thinking, I know these people, and they're not actually all that special. They're a lot like me and a lot like you. They've worked hard to be where they are, and they do have some skills, don't get me wrong, but they're just like us, and that can be good and it can be not so good, depending on your point of view. But this is something I think that everyone should have opportunity to do. And another little example, when I was in the Oregon State Legislature, ran for office, had a bunch of friends, obviously my hometown, and they backed me, and they were very helpful in the campaign. And then I remember one woman in particular, a good close friend, who had never ever thought of public service, thought it was way beyond her ability. There's something she couldn't even imagine doing. She saw me do it, And she knew who I was. She knew I was a real person. She said, well, gosh, I'm a real person too. And she ran for the city council in my hometown and won. So it's empowering and, believe in yourself a little bit. If you spend 8 years in college, between college and veterinary school, or getting your veterinary tech degree, you got the skills to do this job.
That is massive encouragement. I feel like you just offered. You made it seem very tangible and very possible. So hopefully that will kind of light a fire for some people out there, just like it did for your friend who ran for the city council. I think that's really good advice. I remember listening to an interview not too long ago. It was with someone who was highly successful. And they said, what advice would you give to people? And her advice was, don't be so impressed. A lot of times people who do these very public things, these very big jobs are, like you said, a lot like the rest of us. And, that a lot of people have the training and the know-how to really do some good.
No, absolutely. And frankly, you're better trained and have, in my opinion, a more thoughtful process than many of my colleagues in Congress right now. So if you look at them on TV, hey, you can do a better job.
I love that. Well, we've talked a lot about veterinarians and veterinary technicians being suitable for this job. Do you feel like that's the role that's best suited to do this job, or does it extend to the greater pet care community?
Oh, I think the greater pet care community, anyone that's got experience in pet world or frankly livestock world, I think it's important because we're not just looking at the animals on television and watching the nature shows. We actually live, eat, and breathe it with our pets, and if you're on the farm with the animals you take care of, and I think that lends a more realistic approach to some of the solutions. The first step, usually, like in veterinary medicine, to anything you're dealing with, is agree what the problem is. Agree that this is the problem. There are sometimes many solutions for it, and you collaborate with your colleagues or your veterinary team to come up with the best solution for pet's problem, or in this case, a country or state's problem. And you can get stuff done that way, and that I think is hugely valuable. So anyone in the health space, healthcare space, animal healthcare space, a lot of the industry experts understand what goes on. They interface regularly with the pet world and livestock world. It lends, again, a little bit of reality. Everyone looks at, it's the old common sense. And what's common sense? Common sense is what's happened within your 50 square miles of where you live. Outside of that, someone else has a whole different view of what common sense is. And so it's good in the United States Congress. You got 435 House members, 100 Senate members. And if you're open to it, and veterinarians, again, uniquely, and animal healthcare professionals, uniquely suited to listening. There's not enough listening that goes on, in my opinion, in the political world. We need people with good listening skills, not just good talking skills, but good listening skills to embrace what people are talking about, find out what is the real problem, and come at it with several different solutions to actually solve that problem that respect those differences of opinion. That's the name of the game. You do it every day in your
animal. You just described my typical day.
There you go.
Well, so it sounds like there's a lot of people who could potentially do some good. So I really hope this podcast gets out there and reaches a lot of people and offers them some empowerment if they've thought about pursuing a campaign to run for Congress, or even, starting small and maybe eventually going that direction.
Well, and that'd be my recommendation, Cassie. I believe it or not, it does take some skills, I think, to be
I would believe that.
Active member of Congress. Looked pretty easy when I was sitting back home watching football and in between horse calls. Heck, anybody can do this. You're sitting around making calls, and I can do that. Heck, make tougher calls every day, but it is not so easy. Matter of fact, I remember going to state legislature from my veterinary practice. I got talked into it by a friend of mine. Thought, well, geez, I'll just do veterinary medicine in the morning, and then I'll go vote in the afternoon in the Oregon State Legislature. Well, I was quickly disabused of that, because to get speed on the issues, to be moderately knowledgeable and actually do a good job, you have to study and work at it. And again, folks in the animal healthcare space, we know that. We've lived that through our training. We can actually do a much better job, again, I think, than a lot of folks. But I would urge, again, don't get intimidated. I started out on the Canby Planning Commission. I liked it because I didn't have to get elected. You got appointed. And it wasn't like everyone would beat down the doors to be on the planning commission for the big town of Canby, Oregon. But I found I liked it. And it was a meeting like once a month. I became chair of the commission, and we made it twice a month because we were doing a lot of really great things for the growth and development of the community. And I could keep my day job, and found out that I was good at solving the problems like I've talked about. And then my buddy talked me into running for the state legislature. As I said, it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be, but I enjoyed that. And back then, Oregon legislature met for like 6 months every 2 years. So I think it's like 3 months every year. But if you, with relief veterinarians helping out, you can do that, still do some public service and keep your practice going. And then, I was getting to the point in my case where I've been in business and veterinary medicine for over 30 years, almost 35 years, and looking to move on, retire, have someone buy my practice out anyway. Found a great partner to do that. And then this job with Congress opened up, and I thought, well, geez, I could again continue to do public service, not in the veterinary space, but maybe in the human political space, and ran for the seat and won, and then spent 14 years in the United States Congress, and felt like we've made a huge, huge difference, not just in the veterinary world, but again, those problem-solving skills. We're able to, lower prescription drug prices. I worked personally very, very hard on that. We got a big infrastructure bill passed that's going to keep jobs alive for the next 10 to 20 years for folks. So you feel pretty good sometimes about the service. It's tough work, but meaningful.
Absolutely. And, I love listening to your excitement and your passion for all the good that you've been able to do, hearing about the time that you've taken to make sure you review everything in depth so you can make an educated decision and really do a good job. And it sounds like you've had massive impacts, in the healthcare space. So first of all, thank you for all of that. And I wanted to ask you, I feel like we've talked about so many different things that you've been able to do for the greater good. Where do you feel like you had the greatest impact as a veterinarian in Congress?
Oh, well, I guess I've alluded to it a little bit. I'd say the big three would be the One Health bill, trying to get our country's care services organized, and it's not just healthcare, it's EPA, it's other governments, other states, to make sure we have a unified approach to public health emergencies. That's one thing that COVID laid bare, or lack of organization that way. So I think that the work we've done in that space, I think, has been huge. The Veterinary Mobility Act, a little bill that is critical to our community's ability to service our clients and get the job done here in the 21st century. I think that's just really huge. And then again, when I'm on the Energy and Commerce Committee, and that deals with a lot, it's also pretty much all the healthcare stuff, dealing with drugs and products availability for veterinarians. And not just the conditional use permits, but compounding and other tools we use to deliver quality healthcare to our patients. Those would be the areas, the big three, that I think it's been very important for a veterinarian to be here, and feel lucky to be that guy.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, coming from the standpoint of somebody who directly benefits from a lot of that in the industry, I agree that's hugely important. And thank you so much for being there to make sure that all of that happened.
Well, a lot of, when I was in private practice, Washington, D.C., even, Salem, the capital of the state of Oregon, was way out of my mind and sight. But once you get engaged a little bit, you realize how important it is, because if you're not, the old adage, if you're not at the table, you're on the table. Someone's going to be doing something to you that you may not want at the end of the day. So it's important to have representation in the animal healthcare space in the United States Congress or your state legislatures.
Yes, I feel like you're doing an excellent job of illustrating that. Like, I know I'm convinced. But do you feel like the same viewpoint could be offered by a human medical perspective, or is this kind of unique to animal healthcare?
Well, I'm biased. I think
Sure,
we're
me too.
Our fellow docs on this. And, the doctors have a different approach, if you will. They don't deal with herd health. They're dealing with one patient at a time. We deal with kennels, breeding outfits, stable of horses or herd of cattle, sheep or hogs. So we are uniquely able to understand, I think, as I said before, the zoonotic disease concerns and good public health practices, and keep it in perspective. That's one thing I learned from COVID, at least my impression. I know every veterinarian, every individual has a different view of how to be safe during COVID, but I'd like to think most veterinarians were able to keep it in perspective, be safe, but not get too overly concerned. Be concerned, but keep it in perspective. And that's a role that a healthcare professional, I'm a healthcare professional, can provide in these critical emergencies that we see. So again, I think it's been important to be a veterinarian here in the United States Congress.
Absolutely. And, again, I think you've done such an excellent job of illustrating that and how important this truly is. I want to get into, maybe some of the unique parts of being a veterinarian aside from the legislation. I think of, they talk about when people run for office that you're shaking hands and kissing babies. What was that like for you? Were you kissing puppies? Like, how was that campaign trail?
Hey, you should look at my one of my campaign commercials. I'm there with a little puppy in my arms, talking about veterinary medicine and the life I've led, and how it's important to again translate all this stuff into good public policy. So I'm more with the animals. I had another ad where it was about wrangling fellow politicians to get to a solution on a problem, and I had a herd of dogs running around behind me. Another great one where I was on the farm and dealing with chickens and goats. And so, yes, I did
Love
a lot
that.
I'm not kissing too many babies, but maybe animal babies. I did quite a little bit of that. It was kind of fun. That's a fun. Campaigns can be brutal. But that was kind of a fun part.
Absolutely. That sounds like fun.
No, it was great. It was really good. And the other thing, I thought veterinary medicine was good for me. I started my own horse practice after working with a veterinarian for a couple of years. Figured, heck, I wanted to go out on my own. And one of the hardest things I ever did, because I'm believe it or not, more introspective and not so outgoing, was to travel from farm to farm, my pickup truck, just trying to introduce myself to all these ranches and farms out there, saying, hey, I just got a veterinary school. I know a few things. Please consider me when your horse or sheep or cattle need a little bit of help, because I'm available. And, put yourself out there. That's what you got to do when you're in the political world. And thank goodness I had done that, or had to do that in the veterinary world as I started my practice, and served me in good stead. And I serve everyone on the podcast here in good stead.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good you had that experience going into it, and the positivity that comes with that. And, it can be really encouraging when you put yourself out there and then you get that positive response.
That's right. And most people, again, the good news in the animal healthcare industry, because you're dealing with pets or animals, you've got some instant credibility. People love. We saw it during COVID, right? How many animals got adopted during COVID? I swear half my office in Washington, D.C. decided to adopt a dog or a cat during COVID.
Oh, yeah.
It's so reassuring. It's part of the human DNA to connect with our domestic animals in a real personal way. And so that's, I think, extremely helpful.
And so it's interesting that you say that half of your colleagues adopted a dog during COVID, because kind of, as you alluded to, pets are a big deal in this environment. Did you ever have a situation where you had to take off your congressman hat and put your veterinarian hat back on, not from a legislative point of view, but like an animal emergency or animal questions in the office?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was pretty routine, whether it was my own staff whose dog or cat had a problem, or some of my colleagues in Congress would, when we chatted, hey, Doc, got this horse, and we start talking and what have you. And I always said, hey, it's better to get your own veterinarian, get eyes on your animal, but I'll give you my advice for what it's worth, and hopefully get them to the right person to get their pet the help they actually need.
Sure, but still keeping your, skills and knowledge sharp in the meantime.
Well, a little bit. It is tough. You guys all know it's a tough profession. Things change rapidly. I mean, I feel very, very fortunate. In my humble opinion, I grew up during the golden years of veterinary medicine. Post Jane Barrett, all he had basically was liniments, potions, a little scalpel here and there. but geez, antibiotics came into their own. The pain medications are so much better now. IVs for pets, come on, that just didn't happen back in the day. Dental work, diets now that are life-saving for a lot of cats and dogs in particular. It's been an exciting career. I've enjoyed it immensely. And at least when I served in the veterinary world, it was a lifestyle, not just a job, but a lifestyle. And I tried to keep in perspective with my family. I think that's very important. I think your generation, younger generation, does a better job of doing that. But I love being a veterinarian, still consider myself a veterinarian.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, I know I still consider you a veterinarian. Kind of once you're in the club, I think
Right.
you get to stay in.
Right, exactly.
Well, Dr. Schrader, this has been fantastic. I've had so much fun talking to you about, the technical parts and the importance of having animal health representation in Congress. And it's just been so delightful to hear that from the perspective of a veterinarian. I think you've done a great job of illustrating the importance here. And also, it's just been really fun to hear your stories.
Well, most veterinarians have lots of stories. Some are
Yes.
not, you're not able to discuss in the public setting, but most of them are really pretty exciting. This has been a great career, a lot of fun, and being in Congress is kind of a capstone to a career in public service. And really encourage everyone out there to consider it. It's not beyond you. With the training you've had, do baby steps at a time so you get more and more comfortable. And hopefully one of you will serve the United States Congress as an animal healthcare professional.
Well, I think you've done a great job of making a case for why we need someone and hopefully offering a lot of encouragement for anyone out there who's considered making a run.
Well, thank you, Cassie. It's been a lot of fun. Appreciate your help.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you again for coming on the podcast.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank you again for listening to this special edition podcast from Vetfolio and NAVC Embrace. And of course, thank you so much, Dr. Schrader, for joining us. As a community, we need your voice to be heard, so together we can make a difference. I hope this episode inspires you to aim high, and who knows, maybe you're the next voice we need representing the veterinary industry. For more episodes like this, click on the Education tab on the Vetfolio website. As always, we'd love to hear your input on this talk, as well as ideas for topics you'd like to hear from us in the future. Feel free to reach out to me at dvm@vetfolio.com. You can also visit my Facebook page at Dr. Cassi DVM, and you can find me on LinkedIn. And remember, if one animal is better off because of you today, it's a great day.